Hey folks, welcome to Set Apart Homestead. This is Travis, and today I wanted to talk about common mistakes that preppers make, that you make getting ready for whatever is out there that you might face. I think many of us make mistakes along the way, and so this is just some ideas. I got a branch here, keeps smacking me. Hold on. There are things that we kind of make mistakes on, and these are mistakes that I've made too, so trying to pass on just a little bit of knowledge and wisdom. And I think a lot of times, because of movie hypes and media hype about prepping, the zombie apocalypse doomsdayers, that we get caught up on some of these ideas. And I think a few times, every once in a while we need to have a little reality check. That some of this stuff just, it's not a good idea. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about. There's this theory out there, or this idea, another YouTuber put it out, and I'll try to find it's like Prepping 101 or something like that. I can't remember the exact name of the YouTube channel, but I'll look it up and I'll put it in the comments below. And he came up with this idea called the 95-5 rule. And basically what it's saying is that most preppers spend 95% of their time, effort, and energy into doing prepping for things that have only about a 5% chance of actually happening. And I think that's actually really true. When I heard this, and I was like, you know what, this makes sense. Think about it. How many people are prepared for a nuclear war and fallout, or they have a preparedness plan for an EMP attack, or from invasion from the Russians or the Chinese or something like that. They have a plan for that, but do they know how to plant a garden and actually successfully grow food? Do they know how to grow enough food to keep themselves and their family alive? Have they ever done that? Have they ever preserved the food? Do they know what, maybe they could grow it, but then what are you going to do with it? Because it's not going to last forever. It'll spoil. So do they know what to do to preserve that food? Do you know how to change a tire on your car, change the oil, do, basic repairs of your automobile? Do you know how to do basic repairs around your home? Do you know how to fix your generator? Your plan may be, if something happens, that we're going to use this generator, but what if the generator stops working? Do you know how to take that carb apart and clean it and put it back together so that it's functioning? So a lot of the things that have a good chance of happening, we don't prepare for. Or the things that are the simplest and basic, we don't spend a lot of time preparing for that. And I think that's something that a lot of us do, and we need that reality check. That's what we're here for each other. I'm here for you, you're here for me, and then part of that is kind of supporting each other. That hey, while it may be cool to plan for some zombie apocalypse, are you spending too much of your time and effort on that instead of things that could likely happen, or the little things that are going to likely happen even during that zombie apocalypse? You may be spending all your time out, all geared up and camoed out, doing your commando training, but do you know how to really start a fire without a match or a lighter? I mean, do you really know how? You may have that flint and steel, or that rod, or the bow and drill kit, or whatever, but have you actually spent lots of time with it? Have you done those under the worst conditions? Have you gone out when it's drizzly raining and tried to start a fire in the woods? Have you actually done that? Maybe you've read about it in a book, but how many times have you actually done those things? And so we spend a lot of time, I think, focusing on the cool stuff, the stuff that we see in the movies, the stuff, on TV shows and stuff like that, that it's really cool, fun to do, I'll admit it. But the really practical things, the things that are, most likely would happen, how much time do we spend on that? And so we need to remember those, this principle, this 95-5 rule. Because I think it's I think it's something that's lacking in many preppers. And I'm not saying everybody, I'm not pointing fingers, because if I'm pointing fingers at anyone, they're, it's at myself, because I fall victim to this at times. So try to remember those things. If you're not out there actually practicing these skills, then I'm sorry, you're just not going to have them, because if you go out today or sometime soon and you practice these skills, they're going to be under optimal condition. Because most people are, if it's cold, if it's snow is blowing, or if it's raining, or if it's in the middle of a thunderstorm and the winds are blowing 50 miles an hour and there's lightning all around you, you're going to be like, man, I'm going to stay inside. I'll go out and practice tomorrow, when the weather's better. But if you're out there because you're forced to, you may have to start that fire in 50-mile-an-hour winds, or in the middle of a snowstorm, or if it pouring rain. That fire may be the one thing that keeps you alive. And if you're not able to start a fire under the worst conditions, then you're as good as dead in some situations. And so we train a lot of times under the most optimal conditions. And we think that's good enough. And that's for those people that even train. A lot of people don't even train. I made a comment a few weeks back in a video about how you'll see these pictures, people post pictures online and stuff of their bug out bag or their gear and stuff, and it all looks neat. Everything's just all neatly laid out, and it's neatly packaged up, and all nice and tight, and it's they've got good gear. A lot of times they've spent a lot of money on their gear, and you see things that they're still in the original packaging. They haven't even been opened up, and it keeps it nice and compact, and it looks really sharp and neat and organized. But the fact is if you're not getting that stuff out and you're not training with it and practicing with it, in my opinion, you might as well not even have it. I mean, it might increase your odds a little bit having it and never practicing with it, but you're really not going to know how to do it. I mean, do you know how to set a snare? Do you know what to do with the animal after you get it? Like, if you're lucky enough to actually catch an animal with a snare, do you know how to butcher an animal and how to cook it properly? I hear people like, I'll just go out in the woods and I'll live off the land in the woods. Do you really know what kind of food is out there that's available? Here it is, it's winter time, and the pickings are slim anywhere you go. In the woods, in the country, and the pickings are slim because it's just that season. So do you know have you gone out and stayed in the woods for a few days and not taken any food and made yourself, make yourself live off of what's out there in the woods? Have you done that? So saying that, well, if things get really bad, I'll just bug out to the woods and I'll live off of nature, it's a lot harder than you think. It really is. And even in the spring or the summer, when there's much more growing out, it's still going to be really difficult to sustain you, because unless you're an expert on what grows wild that's edible, you're going to have a hard time, and then you're going to risk getting sick if you're eating the wrong stuff. So like I said, we've got to be careful about having this idea of what we're going to do, but yet it not being the reality of what could actually happen. So if you've got all these plans for an EMP, and you've got your little Faraday cage with all your stuff, and you're set to go if there's an EMP, but do you know how to repair something simple? You'd be surprised how many people don't know how to change the tire of their car, or they don't know how to fix a flat, plug a hole in a tire. They don't know how to replace a radiator hose, or a fuel filter, or some just really basic stuff. I'm not even talking about replacing a head gasket or something. I'm talking about really basic stuff. So many people don't know how to do that, or to repair things in their home. And I think that's serious. Do they know how to do basic first aid? And do you know how to use things around you for that basic first aid? If there's a broken, someone breaks their leg, and you don't have the proper tools to set that, do you know what to use instead? If someone gets bit by a snake, do you know what to use? Do you know what plants around you that can be used to help with that snake bite? Sure, if you get bit by a snake now, you need to just go to the hospital. I mean, that's just a good advice, but that may not be available. So do you know what to do? And so the real basic stuff, things that were taught in Boy Scouts, 50 years ago. So kids 50 years ago were learning this stuff in Boy Scouts. Preppers a lot of times don't think about it because, they've got 2 years of freezer-dried food supplies in their garage, and hey, they're good to go, and they've got a, $1,000 bug-out bag, so they're ready to go, and they got a $5,000 cool rifle, and they're ready to go. But do you train? Do you actually get this stuff out and use it? I've started a fire many times in my life without, a lighter or matches or something, using, various, flint and steel and a ferrous rod and a bow and drill and things like that. And I would consider myself pretty knowledgeable on starting a fire those ways. But yet many times I still struggle with it. There's times I've tried to, I'll do the bow and drill, and man, it'll wear you out. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Something is just not connecting. There's other times I've done it that, man, it doesn't take that long. It just starts smoking right away, and you get an ember, and you're good to go. But man, there's other times you've worked at it, and and you got to think that if, it's a real bug out situation that, you're going to be tired, you're going to be scared, you're going to be looking around, you may not have eaten for a few days or had water, you may be cold and wet, and all these different things. And then you're trying to do it also on top of that. It's going to be a lot worse. So we have to think about these things. A lot of people have this idea of this, I'm going to something happen, especially those of you that may live in like a city or suburban, place, and your plan is to bug out. Not everyone's plan is to bug out, and bugging out should not be your first priority. I've said that before. That should not be your first thing to do is bug out. If that's the top thing, the number one thing on your plan, then you need to seriously reevaluate it. But there is a place and a time to bug out, especially if you live more around people. And if you think that, I'm going to bug out and I'm going to, be all covert and have all this, walk plan of where to go through the woods to stay away from people and be all alone, the little lone wolf out there. And well, guess what? There's a good chance that there's going to be lots and lots of other people doing that too. So instead of, having this lone wolf plan of bugging out, it's going to be, droves of refugees leaving the city. And so you're not going to be alone. There's going to be probably thousands, if not millions of people all around you. Have you ever seen, look at these border crossings where there's, thousands and thousands of people trying to, rush the border. That's what it's going to be like. And, these people that, they've walked across Mexico or whatever. That's what it's going to be like. And there's other situations of times that there's war and stuff. Certain countries in the Middle East, there'll be refugees, and hundreds and even thousands of them trying to flee and survive out in the countryside for a while to get to another place. That's what it's going to be like. You're not going to be it's not going to be like in these movies where you're just the lone wolf guy that doesn't run into anyone for days, and it's all isolated and it's cool, and that's not what it's going to be like. So do a reality check on your plan and on your thinking, and don't get so caught up in the Hollywood world of survivalist. And I'm an old school survivalist. I mean, that's how I got started, in Boy Scouts and that kind of stuff. So I'm all about wilderness survival and bushcraft skills. That's where my heart really is. I love that. But this idea that you're just going to go out there and just live in the woods with your amazing bushcraft skills, and you hardly have ever, or if ever, have actually used them and practiced them to where it's set in stone in your mind, you're going to have a rough time. There's this thing that most of you have heard of. It's called muscle memory. And if you're not out there doing something on a regular basis and building that muscle memory, if it's just something that you read in a book of how to start a fire, and you've read it a couple of times, and so you're going to try to remember it. You're not going to remember that. You're going to forget things. And you can't just, say, well, I'll just keep the book with me, because sometimes it's not going to work that way. You may not have lighting. The book may get lost, destroyed, whatever. You need to have muscle memory of this stuff. You need to be able to run out there and gather the things to start a fire, if that's what you're doing, without really thinking about it. Like riding a bike. You just get on it and you do it. And you don't even think about what you're doing. That's the level of prepared that you need to be. And I don't think any of us, or many of us, are at that level for just about everything. Maybe some things we are, but we've really got to, step up our game and stop living. Many of us, okay, I know not everyone, but many have this delusion of what it's going to be like and how they're going to be the ultimate survivalist out there, because they bought some really cool survival kit and they're just going to go out there and just know how to use it, and but yet they've never done it. Or even if it's not bugging out, maybe it's living on the land on your property, you're just going to immediately go to off-grid and being all primitive, but yet you really don't know how to do it. You've never gone out and cut a whole winter's worth of wood on your own and split it on your own manually, that kind of stuff. But yet all of a sudden, when the SHTF happens, you're going to just do it. And I've heard people say, if I have to, I'll just do it. If I have to live off of food that's in the wild, I'll just figure out a way and do it. That's not a good plan, folks. It's not a good plan at all. You need to be out there practicing this stuff on a regular basis and figuring out what doesn't work and what does work. And just because it's in a book doesn't mean it's going to work. It may not work for you or in your area. So you have to get out there and be developing these skills and creating muscle memory, because if you don't, I don't care how much cool gear you have or how much commando, tracking, sniper, perimeter patrolling knowledge you have, if you don't know how to do a basic first aid or start a fire with nothing, or find the right food to survive off of, it's going to be a bad day for you. It's going to be a bad day for a lot of us. So, I'm really talking to myself too a lot in this. I'm not getting on here claiming to be some expert and, grand poobah of prepping. It's things that we have to continue to remember and to continue to push ourselves to train for, because it's very important. A lot of times the most important things are the things that we forget and leave out of our training. So do that. Remember the 95-5 rule. 95% of the time, the effort that you put into stuff, may only have a 5% chance of actually happening, and try to flip that around. And I think you'll be a lot better off. So, all right. Thank you all for watching, and I'm going to catch you in the next video.